So welcome everybody to the Porto Embracing Employment for Adults with Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities. And we'll be talking about building inclusive jobs and assisting employers to meet their specific hiring needs. And we'll talk about how we match skills of job seekers, their interests, their abilities of job seekers with custom designed jobs, and how the Porto Charities Employment Initiative within the Diocese of Arlington developed. And my name is Christine Fowler, and I'm a parent of 3 and a dog who's got her squeaky toy. Sorry about that. And 2 of my children have disabilities. Big Ben in the red has autism, and he's 23 years old, and Zach's 25, and he has Down syndrome. And Zach works at St. Leo's. And my background is in nursing. I have a master's degree in critical care nursing, and it was a clinical case management master's, which I found those skills seem to dovetail rather nicely with this project. So I'm a board member of Porto and the employment chair, and we are going to talk about work. And why work? Why is it important? And we can take it all the way back to the beginning of time. In Genesis, we learn that the Lord God, quote, the Lord God took the man and put him in the garden to till it and keep it. And that was early in Genesis, before the fall. So work is not a product of sin. It is a product of our creation and our creator, who designed us to thrive with work. So also, I found recently a quote by St. John Paul the Great, or John Paul II, rather, who was Pope when he was speaking to a group in Toronto in 1984, spoke about work and about work for people with disabilities. And he actually had a quote along the lines of, "To deny work to people with disabilities is a serious form of discrimination." And he felt that the church process should promote the right to work for people with disabilities. And then if we look at the American Psychological Association published a handbook on intellectual and developmental disabilities in 2021, and they devoted an entire chapter to integrative, inclusive, competitive work. And they describe work as the defining characteristic of adulthood. So it's not surprising that we derive a lot of self-esteem and positive attributes such as dignity and opportunities for socialization and community inclusion, and financial security and resources from working. And all of those combine into what our friends at the ARC have labeled a life like yours. So a life that is similar for people who have typical neurodevelopment, can be approximated or close for people with intellectual disabilities when we give them opportunities to be included. So we're talking about work. When we talk about competitive, integrative, community-based, inclusive employment, all those words going together, we're talking about natural settings. So when we look at work in natural settings, it's important that we understand that it's in natural settings that people have the opportunity to develop new skills and have the ability to gain greater independence and be in a community that is inclusive, where they meet different types of people with different skills and different strengths and different interests. So it's a richer, more interesting community. And the contrast to that, as far as work is concerned, would be more segregated employment, where people with disabilities work with people with disabilities and have some supervision or coaching or instruction by people without disabilities. But by and far, the majority of people in the room and in the setting have disabilities. And although that's been a dominant form starting in the 80s, outcome studies have never been able to really document that segregated employment promotes skill development that's translatable into other settings in work. So it fails to demonstrate growth in employable skills or in skills that can increase independence. So in the long run, people who are in segregated work remain in segregated work and remain dependent on people without disabilities providing supports. So for people who can get into inclusive, natural settings, employment in those settings, they have the ability to learn and to eventually become independent and not require job supports, or at least not require highly expensive job supports. So it ends up being less expensive per person over time to be in a natural setting. So one nice day on a soccer field, a group of parents talked about why we needed to be concerned about work. We had our children were students in the LIFE program, and we realized that the employment rates for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities were really horrible. I mean, 15% for inclusive work, and maybe 36% if you lump together all the different types of work and settings. And so we were really concerned and wanted to figure out ways of making sure that our young adults who were students in the LIFE program would be able to graduate and be employed. And we were brainstorming on the soccer field. And at the time, Zach really wanted to move to Miami and be employed by the Miami Heat. And I wasn't really ready to let him fly that far. So we were trying to figure out an alternative that would help him on his way to that big goal. And I brainstormed that, maybe he would be a great PE assistant. And from that point, we said, well, there's lots of students who have had experiences in childcare. Those might generalize to school settings, and there may be a lot of jobs available in schools or that we could develop in schools. So we talked and we were brainstorming, and then Leo, who's here in the picture, and Larry, but Leo had the initiative, let's say, to text the bishop and say, we have this great idea. I have this great idea. Let's develop internships in schools and for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And the bishop thankfully responded and said, that's a great idea. Why don't you talk to Ward Jones and the director of HR at the diocese? So we started there, and he may have given us other people to talk to, but we started there, and we continued to talk about how to do that. And in 2019, we added officially to our mission statement for Porto that employment would now be part of our mission, so that not only would we be supporting inclusive education in the Catholic schools, but also recognizing that the natural progression from inclusive education is to inclusive work. And there we went from there. And we initiated our employment initiative phase one with the blessings of the bishop. We reached out to Diane Elliott and Heidi Graf at the LIFE program. They really partnered and developed a plan and talked with principals that were nearby, that were at parochial schools in close proximity to George Mason LIFE. And they developed internships in those 3 schools. And Heidi and the principals met and identified what the principals thought were important things to consider in developing an internship in their school. So each school had its own take on this internship opportunity. And then Heidi was able to match up students who would benefit from those internships and who had skills to offer and grow in those settings. So that was one arm of our pilot, our first phase of the pilot. And the second arm, because the bishop had said he wanted 6 schools to participate, so we had to find 3 more. And we were successful in talking with pastors and principals and found 3 other schools. And those schools we funded for the first year with a grant of $10,000 each. And 2 graduates of the George Mason LIFE program lived close to schools that were interested in participating. And so they had skills that worked in those settings. One had done several internships at the Library of Congress, and he really wanted to be a library assistant, and the library assistant was really happy to hear that, and the school would benefit from that. So that worked as a nice fit for that school, and that was St. Joseph's. And OLGC was interested in participating. They've all been always been very supportive of Porto, and Celeste lived very close to OLGC, and she had experience in childcare and school, so she was a great fit and was able to onboard at that school. And then there was one other school, St. Veronica, that already had a volunteer who had an intellectual disability, and she had been volunteering for a year and was really ready to become an employee. And so through the grant from Porto, she was able to become employed at that school. She's moved out of the state, so she's the only person who's really not continued to participate. So, and Porto board members advised along the way to the principals, pastors, and parents to make sure that the needs of the school were considered, and the needs of the intern or employees in this case were considered as well. So we had good outcomes from that first phase. All the principals and all of the schools continue to participate and are still happy with the people working there. And from the original 6 that started in 2019, 2020, we've grown to actually now about 26 and some stage of developing toward employment. And that was with the pandemic. So we were pretty happy with those numbers. And actually, some people started working during the pandemic. Celeste was one of them. And also this young lady in this picture, she started working during the pandemic. And some of the schools were really having a hard time hiring during that time. So it was actually a good opportunity for a lot of our young adults to start working during the pandemic. Other outcomes we became aware of through interviews. We interviewed principals and parents and job seekers, well, people who were in the jobs at this point. And pretty much across the board, people identified positive changes in the culture, happier employment situations, greater job satisfaction. And the affirming life was very consistently discussed or mentioned by people that we interviewed, that this was really living out what pro-life meant to them. And that was definitely a positive thing to hear consistently. And the employees who were working in the jobs consistently mentioned that they were proud of themselves for being in the jobs, and that they felt like it was a positive situation for them, and that they felt like they were actually becoming role models, which is pretty amazing when you think about it. That it took me a while to really understand why that statement was so powerful to me, but it's rare for a person with a disability to be considered a role model, and much less to feel that for themselves. So to me, that was a major statement that was very positive. I don't know, I saw Megan nodding. I don't know if she wanted to add to that. Later, maybe. So that brought us to our phase 2. We met with the bishop in early 2022 and reported our positive results of that first phase of our initiative. And he was very encouraging and happy that we were able to grow from 6 to 20 plus, and really decided that if we could do that in schools, that we should be able to develop jobs in offices as well. And said he really wanted to see a person with an intellectual disability or a developmental disability working in the chancery in his offices. So with his support, we launched that phase and met with the CEO and the director of HR. And because the bishop said he wanted to show his leadership, we were very successful at initiating a plan to develop jobs there. So our first hurdle was that there were no open positions, no entry-level open positions that could capitalize on the gifts of a person with an intellectual disability. So at that point, we said, well, there is this process called customized employment. So we're going to talk about what that is. What customized employment really does is it examines the job seeker in terms of, and describes them in terms of their skills, their interests, the conditions of employment that are important to them, their requirements for support, what motivates them, all of those things in many aspects of their lives, not just in their previous job experience. So with the employers, when we look at employment from a customized standpoint, we asked that the employers, in this case, the Chancery, took a look at how their work situation, how their job, how doing the work of their departments could be adjusted, or where their needs were really, what were their unmet needs that they could potentially carve out and address by assigning tasks to a person with a disability. So when you put those two together, what you end up with is a voluntary negotiation of a tailored job that meets the needs of the job seeker and the employer. And the way we did that was that we offered a tool that was designed by Mark Golden Associates, which is really the company that's the founder of Customized Employment. And it was a tool that the Chancery could use in all of their departments and look at those ways they do business and look for those unmet needs and their opportunities for assigning a person to do a task that may be better done by a person with a disability because it would help reduce costs, or by restructuring an activity or a process so that it would be more efficient by adding a person as an assistant.
Go a little further on the point of assigning those tasks to somebody in this situation with the disability, and that helping with reducing cost. That has nothing to do with disability pay rate, and it has everything to do with people who were in higher salaried or higher positions with a lot of qualifications, who were doing tasks that were could be done by entry level position, but just that job didn't exist. So it was extra stuff on their plate that really, if we were able to remove those people in the higher salaried positions, would be more effective in what they were hired to do versus other tasks.
Right. So that would increase their efficiency in their primary role and allow them to be more effective, but also group those tasks that needed to get done, regardless, and give it to somebody who was really happy to do that task. So with that process, the Chancery really they were able to develop 3 part-time jobs, and we were able to look at who could match up. So the director of HR, Teresa Dalia, really was the mastermind at looking at all of those tasks that were identified and then clustering them into the 3 separate jobs. And our process, just to review, started with that leadership meeting between Porto and the diocese, where we sat down and said, well, how could we do this? And then we offered that tool and started the spreadsheet. And that was really the diocese looking at their own organizational processes and where their unmet needs were. And then again, they developed the 3 jobs that were all part-time, but all paying above minimum wage, actually. And then the job development meeting between the HR director and Porto Charities took place, and we reviewed the spreadsheet. And so then we had an idea of what we needed to look for in job seekers to match up with what the Chancery needed. So we had been going and looking and interviewing and doing this discovery process with some of the graduates of the Catholic school programs for persons with intellectual and developmental disabilities, and really started to narrow it down by commuting, who was willing to commute. And then we looked at who had the skills that matched up nicely with the 3 jobs that had been created. So we were able to match 3 people, and that was a really wonderful thing because we didn't have all that much time to do discovery. And so we sort of felt like the Holy Spirit was in that. And then we scheduled for the job coaches to come in with the job seeker and meet at the Chancery and do sort of a site preview the job site, meet the potential supervisor, coworkers, and get a sense of the skills or the tasks that they would be doing in that job. And after that, then the job coach and the job seeker could decide, is this a good fit? Do we need to make some changes? Are there adjustments that we need to make? And then when they decided exactly how that would work, made some fine tuning, then HR made an offer, job seekers accepted, and then Porto provided a training for the diocesan leadership team that talked about communication styles and sort of a general disability awareness short seminar. And then the jobs began with job coaches providing support. So one of the jobs was in the Office of Catholic Schools and the Office of Development in the Chancery. So that was one thing that is a little different than a typical job description, is that these jobs were clustered, carved out of multiple different roles. So they ended up having to span, most of them did span 2 or even 3 departments. So there were multiple supervisors and coworkers involved, but that worked out. So Emma's job is in 2 departments, and she does a lot of different tasks. She takes documents to the shredding room, which involves going on an elevator and going out down to another floor and shredding up lots of stuff, and it's very rewarding. She's also learned to scan independently and does lots of mail outs for the Office of Development and puts packets together for mailings or seminars. And here she is talking with her supervisor directly and getting her information that she needs to do her work for the day. And Emma's work decreased a backlog in materials management, and I believe that was the shredding part of her job. She also had a very complicated, and still does this job, complicated filing project, and that decreased the backlog. Well, it improved the workflow for 2 other professionals in the Office of Catholic Schools who had to stop what they were doing to go and work on this filing project. And when one had to stop and work on the filing, another person had to move from her position to fill in for the other person's position. So it really disrupted the workflow for those 2 other employees. So Emma coming on and doing that filing project really improved the working dynamics in that office for many people. So that was a win-win. So what have we learned since we started this project? We really learned the first key is collaboration on a lot of different levels with a lot of different people. Diane Elliott and Heidi Graf collaborated and worked with principals. We've had our champion who started us all off with Bishop Burbidge, which was extremely important. Having that champion is really a key to success. And then parents have been very involved and supportive in figuring out how to arrange for transportation to jobs, how to secure funding for job supports, how to find job coaches. So all of those things really fell on parents, and parents really talked with their young adults too about the jobs and what was important to them, and so to make sure that they understood the tasks that would be required. And then the individuals themselves with disabilities had choice. They could evaluate these jobs and decide if that was meaningful to them and a job that they wanted to participate in. So in all of this, the collaboration and the commitment to the process is another big piece in this statement, because what we found is that if we deviate from our process in customized employment, we end up having to fix things on the as we go on. So it's when we can make a good match, we can really do a good job of discovering the job seeker's strengths and motivation and interests, and really identify how to match that up with the employer's real unmet needs. Then we really have a win, and the job coaching goes much more smoothly, and fading the job supports can happen more realistically. So I think that's a major key as well. The second key is the job coach. And Megan was one of our very experienced job coaches. And job coaches are really, really important because not only do they support the individual onboarding and learning their new job, this new employee needs support to do the job well from the beginning and to learn how to do the job well and become independent. But also the new supervisors and coworkers may need support in learning how to communicate effectively, learning how to be confident in providing feedback, learning how to give correction if an error is made, and learning how to celebrate the successes when jobs are well done. So that developing of natural supports is just as critical as teaching the tasks well. For the fading process to occur well, natural supports really need to be well developed. So all of the things that a job coach do are as kind of listed here and represented pictorially. We have a young lady who's on her job preview. She's getting to know her supervisor and looking at the environment. And the job coaches are also looking at the environment, trying to get an idea of what tasks are going to occur here. What's the culture? What's the leadership style? What are the rules? What are those things that they're going to have to teach? And what tasks are going to be really broken down as task analyses so that real systematic instruction can be delivered, and so that data can be collected, so that evaluation is really clear and where instruction needs to be changed or improved so that learning can be more efficient. All of those things are done by a job coach. Looking at prompting strategies that don't create dependence, but foster independence. We're all really good at talking and telling people what to do and correcting verbally, but that creates dependence on a person to do that. So job coaches create visual supports and learn how to teach new employees to use their iPhones, possibly to have lists or videos of a task in case they need to review something before doing it. Sometimes tasks come and go, right? They're not maybe every single day, and that's difficult. So when things are super routine, it's easy to stay real accurate. But when things come and go, sometimes you need a review, and a video on an iPhone can be a really nice way to review how a task should be executed. And positive behavioral supports, really a big part of that is really celebrating when things are done right and letting a person know that they did a good job so that they repeat that. Key number 3, funding for the job supports. So there's several ways that parents and job seekers can pay for job supports, job coaches. And DARS is probably the most frequently used avenue to find funding. And that stands for Department of Adult Rehab Services. And almost all of our individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities qualify for DARS support. And it was utilized effectively at the Chancery with 2 out of the 3, and in several other positions in the schools. And for people who do not have access to DARS, or if they finish with DARS and need to continue, there's local funding from Fairfax County CSB, and that's called Self-Directed Services Funding. And that's really for people who are on the wait list for a waiver, but who do not have waiver services yet. So Fairfax County has created sort of a bridge service to span that time during the waiting list to provide some funding for community integration, which includes work. And then some families have provided private funding, private job coaching, and we could also look for private donors parishes and grants, which we're looking at trying to write grants to help fund a variety of things now. For long-term supports, which would be greater than 12 months, say, some people say 3 months, and it kind of depends on the situation and where funding is coming from. But Medicaid waivers provide long-term funding supports for job and other community services. So in Virginia, there are 3 waivers for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities, and all three of them cover individual supported employment services. And 2 of the waivers also fund workplace assistance, which is another form of supports at the workplace. And again, for long-term, if you are on a wait list, you can use self-directed services funding to fund job supports long-term until a waiver is obtained. And then again, private funding from families. This is a video about
It's a new venture that we started in the fall of 2019. It's grown from 6 original employees that are working in the schools as classroom assistants, cafeterias, helping with PE, librarians, the parish offices, doing the same work that anybody else can do.
We know he can work. We know he can do these run and gun tasks that you have to run around and do all this stuff. He has all the energy for it.
I do a lot of projects at work, like computer scanning, and then I do sweat papers, stuff in floats. At the timesheet, I do a lot.
Sort the mail and throw all the boxes and get the lunch for from the school.
He's very diligent in his work. Is here every morning at 7:30, and he helps out in the carpool. He comes in, helps out in the office the rest of the day. He's just a very hard worker and just a great guy, and everyone loves him.
I help the kids during recess. I also help during special classes like library, gym class, art and music. I also am grateful to working here, and I know my parents are happy of me to work here and coming back for my 5th year.
I think it's important that we have these young adults working in our offices. We certainly have a lot of work that they can help us with, but it helps them to grow. We've seen such a interpersonal skills development that she's really part of our office now.
When I put a piece of paper, went in many noise, you heard it here, I press, you scan, continue, and I scan a folder.
And this is between 2 and 3. She goes to all the offices, pick up mail, and bring it back to the mail room, and we run it through the mail machine. She's very talented, very gifted. We're blessed to have her. I know everything she tells me, and she does.
Yeah,
she
with
does.
this big smile.
Well, you heard from several of the employers there, and I had asked for a few to come on to the webinar tonight, but we have Bill Grossman, who is on our webinar, and he's the Director of Service and Community Growth at St. Mark's. So he's been involved with Emily Dalgetty's Coffee and Community Ministry, which isn't really part of Porto Works, but certainly demonstrates the value of providing community-based opportunities for people with disabilities. So I would like to ask Bill to just maybe tell us a little bit about the impact that Coffee and Community has had at St. Mark's.
Well, we absolutely love Emily. As a matter of fact, I've known Emily for, I think, about 30 years. I was a stay-at-home dad for about 10 years, and I think I first met Emily at BAC Pool in Vienna, along with my daughter, and we helped Emily stay afloat in the baby pool a few times and help her learn how to swim and dive. And that's where I got to know Emily. So I've known her for a long time, but we're so, you ask anybody up at St. Mark that knows Emily and comes by for the coffee, and the only bad days are when Emily is not there. There's been a couple days where we had something going on and we couldn't have the coffee, and they're always coming and saying, "Where's the coffee? Where's Emily?" So we love having her. And I think we just celebrated the first year anniversary. It's been a great community bonding. I can't believe it's been a year. That's just like it just started months ago.
Emily has a specific color that she has assigned to each day of the week that she'll wear. And Coffee and Community happens to fall on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And we all quickly learned that Tuesdays were blue and Thursdays were green. And so if you pop by St. Mark's any Tuesday or Thursday, you will see a lot of people in blue or in green. And that is something that people just started talking about in conversation, and seeing Emily, and they would comment on, "Oh, you have a beautiful blue sweater," or "This, I love your green today." And Emily would share that, like, of course it's Tuesday, it's blue. And
Also a big highlight is that she, I believe the night before each day she comes in, she bakes a different goodie. It could be a brownies, it could be chocolate chip cookies, and everyone looks forward to it. I'm often in the office just right outside of where they do this, and I can hear our coworkers saying, "Oh, gotta go see Emily's coffee, and I wonder what she made last night." And they just get so excited. Emily makes a point of peeking into our offices and letting everybody know she's here. And her face just lights up when our pastor, Father Pat, walks in. Anybody from the staff, people that come in regularly, she knows them, and we just love having her.
Thank you for sharing that. And now we're trying to spread the word that this is a great opportunity for other people in other parishes, maybe
Absolutely.
to do something similar.
I just saw in the chat someone asked if could tell more about Coffee and Community. I could for hours and hours. I will not. But what I'll say is that it's something that when her prior job disappeared, and then through the pandemic and isolation, Emily and her family were working to figure out, what comes next. And the place that Emily still felt very safe and okay going throughout lockdown, throughout the pandemic, was her parish church, which happens to be St. Mark. And so what was developed is, after morning mass on Tuesdays and Thursdays, Emily, during morning mass, Emily prepares coffee, tea, puts out all the sugar and the cream, and sets the table. And also in preparation, Emily bakes with her mom, and they bring in a treat to share. And so then when morning mass gets out, people are welcomed to stop by and join Emily for a cup of coffee or water, or just to visit, or just the cookie or brownie. And so an opportunity for Emily to give back to the parish where she feels so welcome, and, as Bill mentioned, has been a part of for her whole life. And also a natural environment to develop a work opportunity for her, so that she's both continuing to develop her work and employment skills, and also her soft skills and social skills, and her she's really become all of our life coach with her tips on what to wear every morning and how to schedule our lives. And so
and some days the communities takes about an hour to get out of there. I mean, they really get comfortable in there, and it's they're in no hurry to leave. And I believe this kind of idea started, Marilyn, I think you came in and told me that there was a similar thing in O'Connell, possibly, where somebody was doing this.
No, Susan told me, or am I on mute? Susan told me that at O'Connell they did a coffee cart, and they took it around to the teachers' lounges and things. And she and I came up with the idea that church is Emily's safe and happy place. Let's come up with something here. And so that's when I came in and talked to you, and we came up with the plan, which was not a coffee cart, although she uses a coffee cart to bring everything in. But
Boy, we could really up this game and break the cart down to the school and its teachers, because they can't get out of their classroom to join us.
Well,
but,
we have thought about that, but I'm not sure that they want us to do that at this point. But
no, because then all the kids will want coffee too.
it would be fun. Yeah, we've actually thought about that. But anyway, that's how it all came about. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And you were great, Bill.
I want to jump in because right there was a great opportunity of the kind of the natural supports in the community that grows, and how once we get rolling, everyone starts thinking toward the, you know, the success of these projects and these missions and the greater community. As Bill hears, oh, O'Connell coffee cart, and he's thinking, wait, we do have a coffee cart, you know, that this is really that planting the seed, and then watering, tending the soil, like Christine talks to, but then really letting the community run with it and grow and develop. And I just, yeah, like I said, I could talk about it for hours. I know that's not what I'm supposed to do here, but
But it does, you know, it does dovetail with the idea that, you know, we need community at church. So it was an unmet need. I mean, you know, you all recognize that, and it dovetailed nicely with Emily's needs. So it's that win-win of meeting needs on both ends of that, you know, it's community, right? It's meeting everybody's needs. And some of the jobs in the diocese at the chancery really did that too. In the video, you saw a young man who was putting this huge document. It was an architectural drawing into the big scanner. And that was the first unmet need, that when we met with Ward Jones and I said unmet need, he went, whoa, I have a room full of documents that need to get scanned. Can you find somebody to do that? Because nobody wants to do that. You know, they're piling up and we want to digitally scan them and file them, and we can't get it done. And so Henry's doing it and doing a beautiful job with that project. So meeting those unmet needs, they can be anywhere and nearly everywhere. And we have a lot of people who want the opportunity to be in their community and being a part of being a real part in the middle of the community and not on the fringes, not in a place where they can't contribute something that's meaningful. They want to contribute.
Hello, Emily. We were talking about your job, Emily. Coffee and community.
I mean,
A good meeting. Hey, Zach. Hello. Can you tell everyone what you love about working at St. Leo's real quick?
Oh gosh, this is about kids, man. I mean, with PPE. Well, actually, the majority of the school, like PPE, recess, lunch, library, preschool.
Thank you,
Thanks, Zach. And Zach, I think you brought up the preschool piece because this is Zach's third year being a paid employee, his fourth year at St. Leo's, but this is the first year that Zach has had helping with preschool on his schedule. And Zach, when we first put preschool on your schedule this year, you weren't excited, which is okay. Because
actually, I was nervous.
yeah, you were nervous because preschool is unpredictable. Like you said, preschoolers don't know anyone yet, and preschoolers don't know about rules. But I'm glad you brought that up as part of your schedule because you overcame that challenge.
We have a collection of quotes. You've heard from Zach and Marika. When we asked her what it meant to work in a school, she said, for me, it was to hang out with kids and the nice staff members I get to work with at St. Thomas More Cathedral School. And she said, it's therapeutic for me. She really said that. It makes me happier. And then we have Kevin, whose mother sent us a quote that he really enjoys his job. He looks forward to going every day to work. He's encouraged by his coworkers. They make an effort to find out what is going on in his life, and he is part of the school and feels like he really belongs. And that was from Kevin's mom.
Do you know the gentleman that works at OLGC? Because he's been there for a while. So Miyoshi?
Yes.
So it's another small world is that when I was coaching baseball many, many years ago, I coached his brother, Jack Miosi, and I got to know all four of them, the family, the parents and him on the baseball fields. And I think he's been in OWC for quite a while, hasn't he?
I think 10 years.
Yeah, I was gonna say
8
at
or
least
10,
10 years.
something like that. Yeah. He was the first person really with an intellectual disability to be hired in the diocese in a school that we're aware of. And
Right.
yeah, and we recognized OLGC for that. They've been participating in this effort for a long time. And then one of our young ladies who works in a school had COVID a few weeks ago, and she missed work for several days. And one of her coworkers, or the teacher that she is paired up with, sent a note to the young lady's mother. She said, just thought you would like to know that it wasn't the same at school without V these past 2 days. The jobs she does are more appreciated by all because of her absence. We love her. And that's kind of the epitome of knowing that you're needed and wanted, is when you're missed, when you're not there. So we were excited to see that quote. And I think that brings us to our last slide of why do we need inclusive employment? And that really inclusive kingdoms are reflective of the kingdom of God, of how God created us to be together. And it always, I go back to Corinthians, that whole, the body is made of many parts, but it works best when they're all working together. And we all, when we're working together in communities, we are a better community. And you see that in practice, in reality, when you see that communities that are inclusive, they grow and develop deeper connections to each other, and gifts of people become understood and recognized when they were hidden sometimes before. And again, it goes to, for me, back to the Bible, that we're not supposed to bury our gifts in the ground, but we're supposed to invest and grow them. And our population of people with intellectual disabilities have largely been hidden from the workforce in many ways. And so here we have the opportunity to bring their gifts into the center, into our places of work, where they can grow and become even better at what they're good at, right? Like we want for all of our children, what we want for ourselves. So those previously unrecognized gifts become apparent, and everybody is happy about that. We all want to see successes in ourselves and in our coworkers and our families. So it builds everybody up. And science tells us that the more social connections we have really has an impact on health, both physical and emotional health. So where people are employed, they tend to be healthier, both physically and emotionally. And where there's unemployment, physical and emotional health deteriorate. So work is good. And that is really the way I am tying this up, and hopefully we can build more inclusive communities in the workplace.
I'm here to sign my contract for Bishop Arlington High School.
Is that you're going to be your first job?
Yes, sir.
Are you excited?
Yes, I am.
All right. Okay, well, let's get to the signing here of your contract. Nice. What do you say now as a Bishop Ireton employee?
Go Cardinals.
That is a great way to end it. So that's our final slide.
And thank you, Christine, for this wonderful, wonderful presentation. And if anybody has any questions, I think we have time for like one or two. If anybody has any other questions, we can happily follow up with you. You can email Christine, go on our website, and we are happy to talk to you about this program.
One thing that we have learned is that when we are able to create these matches, when we have an employer who wants to hire somebody with a disability and we can find a person with an intellectual disability that matches up well, when we create those jobs and we know that they can be, actually those matches can happen and we can really employ a person, we've had really good luck with ServiceSource providing job coaching. So when we have these opportunities, we think we can get partners in our community that have that we can use their funding, that people with the intellectual disabilities have the ability to get funding through DARS so that they can partner with us. And they're happy when we create these jobs that they can provide job coaches for. So it's a good opportunity to partner. So if you have contacts and know employers that might be interested, then we would like to talk with them.
Thank you so much. If there are no other questions, we will go ahead and wrap this up. And thank you so much for sharing your time with us on a Thursday evening.
Yes.
And
Thank
we
you
really
all.
do appreciate all the contributions from all of our audience. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you for coming, everybody. That was great.